Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Drew and this is JustAGuyLinux, and this is day 2 of 60. So we are talking about BSPWM, and we're going to be talking about it in terms of it being a starting window manager. But at the same time, if given an opportunity that I only had one window manager to use for the rest of my life, I would go with BSPWM. Now, most of you are going to go, what about DWM? And the truth of the matter is, they're so close in terms of my rankings, 1A and 1B. And if you're asking a day to day, 1A and 1B could switch very easily. They are both incredible window managers. What sets BSPWM apart is that I don't have to patch it, I don't have to recompile it. And when it comes to a configuration file, it is without question one of the easiest ones that you will see. BSPWM stands for Binary Space Partitioning Window Manager. What that means in practice is simple. Every time you open a window, it splits the available space. So let's say I'm opening my first window, it will open it in full screen. If I open a second window, it splits the space in half, and so on, and so on. Now, what they call this is basically a binary tree layout, and you can move things around, like so. The truth of the matter is, I usually don't get to 4 windows on a individual workspace. I just usually end up with like 1, 2, maybe 3. Now, getting BSPWM installed is incredibly simple on Debian. Now, that being said, if you want the version that you're looking at right now, if you go to codeberg/JustAGuyLinux/bspwm-setup and install using the install script, you're going to get BSPWM, SXHKD, Polybar, Rofi, and Dunst all installed from the Debian repos, and then a kind of specialized PyCom. It used to be called FT Labs. It is not anymore. And then you're going to get a configuration that makes sense. Now, there will be a link in the description below, but if you do go to this codeberg.org/JustAGuyLinux and look at the BSPWM setup, you'll notice that I have added quite a bit of documentation in the README file, and you'll be able to see what it installs in terms of software, mostly from the Debian packages, as well as some of the key bindings here. Now, we're going to talk about tab management. That is not part of BSPWM. That's something that I added later. And I don't know that I love it, but it is there. So we'll get into that later. Now let's talk about core workflow, okay? If you look at these core key bindings, you're going to be 90% of the way there, okay? And let's go over here. So the core key binding tour, you hit super enter and you get a open WES term, which is the default terminal. Let's say you want to hit Super F and you're going to open Thunar, which is the default file manager. If you use Super Q, you are going to quit or close a window. The remaining windows automatically resize to fill the space. If I use Super Spacebar, okay, then you're going to get Rofi to come up, and this would be your application launcher. Okay, you can use it in terms of moving your arrows around, or you can just say, Firefox, for example, just type it out and you'll be able to launch it directly from there. Again, Super Q to close, Super F to open Thunar. Now currently, Thunar, or the window on the right, is in focus. You can notice that by the blue border that happens to be around Thunar. If I want to change focus and go to the terminal, I use Super and then the left arrow key. Boom. And so it then highlights, or you notice that the border has now switched from Thunar to the terminal. And now it is in focus, so I can just say Figlet A. Oh, A. There you go. And you'll be able to switch from one side to the other. Not everyone wants to use the keyboard for everything. So if you're noticing where the arrow is for the mouse, if I just simply move it or hover in the window to the left, it becomes in focus. Similarly, if I go back to the right, it changes focus to Thunar once again. Now, while I am able to use Super Shift left or Super Shift right to move one window from one side of the screen to the other, I can use Super Control left or right, and that will allow me to resize the window. Can I use my mouse? The answer is yes. I can't just drag, like I can't hold and drag by using the left mouse click and then trying to drag it somewhere. That doesn't work. But if you hold the window key down and then you left mouse click, you're able to move from one side to the other and just drop it right there. Okay. Same thing is if you want to resize the window, you got to hold the Windows key down, right mouse click this time, and just drag to where you want it to go or drag it back. So what if I resize something like out of control and I'm like, oh wow, what's the easiest way for me to resize everything back to it being equal on the screen? I just use the Windows key and hit equal, and it resizes everything for me automatically. Now, while we're talking about Windows, if you recall, I use Super Spacebar to launch Rofi, and you can launch whatever you want from this. If I hit escape, it goes away. But I also put in a toggle for a tiled window, and that is Super Shift Spacebar. So right now, it took whatever I wanted out of the stack. Now I'm using the mouse left click as well as the Windows key and left mouse to reposition it. Again, if I want to, I can use window key plus right mouse click and then have it resize any way I want to and position it like I said. Now, if I wanted to put it back into a tiled window, I simply toggle it by using Windows Shift Spacebar again, and it puts it back into a tiled, I want to say stack, but that's just not right. So it puts it back into a tiled window. So let's talk about workspaces for a minute. As you can see, the polybar that is at the very top of the screen is showing there are 5 workspaces that are being used. For example, if I go to 6, it's going to highlight, but there's actually nothing there. So the thing to remember is it only shows if there is an occupied window on that workspace. So if I go to 1, this is Super 1, Super 2, Super 3, Super 4, and now Super 5. You can change between these workspaces really easily by using Super and then the numeric workspace. If I want to move, let's say, Thunar to a different workspace to be on its own workspace, I can simply go Windows or Super Shift 6. Okay. Now it doesn't change, it doesn't follow, is what I should say, to workspace 6. It's going to leave you on workspace 5. But if I go to Super 6, now Thunar is on its own workspace. And if I say Super Shift 5, it's going to move it back, Super 5, and now they're both occupying an equal amount of space on workspace 5. Now I wanted to mention that I used to use Super H, and that was a helper script. And what that did was show the key bindings in Rofi. Now I have since changed that because of Vim motions. I didn't want it to be confused with Super H in Vim. So I am now using Super /, which is also the question mark key. And that shows the key bindings for everything in my key binding configuration file. I like this because it changes when I change that file. So for example, if I decide to show Firefox, it shows both Super B and Super Shift B, as well as if I say terminal, it shows how to launch WesTerm, which is Super Enter, and then a Scratchpad terminal using Super Shift Return. Let's actually show that really quickly. So if I show this this Scratchpad and I just say Figlet C, there it is. It's going to show me whatever is on my terminal. But if I use Super Shift Enter again, it doesn't actually close the window. It is a Scratchpad, and that can be retrieved by toggling it back with Super Shift Enter again. So you don't necessarily lose what you were doing in the Scratchpad. It just brings you back to the point where you decided to toggle it off. But if you use Super Q and close it, and then you use Super Shift Enter again, it truly, stopped that session, and now you're starting with a brand new session again. I recognize that I am going to exceed my target. I was trying to target 8 to 12 minutes per video. That's just not going to happen this time around. I knew that was not going to happen. Regardless, there are definitely things that I want to continue talking about. One is, I am using Polybar, and we're going to deep dive Polybar a little bit more later in the week, because Polybar is being used for BSPWM as well as i3 and OpenBox. So when I talk about all three of those window managers, I will follow it up with a Polybar video. So with that, Polybar is showing RAM, CPU, disk space that's being taken up, as well as the occupied windows. Also, if you use your mouse and hover over volume, you can click on it. That's a left mouse click, and then mute it. Or you can scroll and it will decrease the volume, and you scroll the other direction and it will increase the volume. Now again, if you wanted to use keybinds for this, this is going to be Super and then F10 to mute, F10 to toggle back, F11 to decrease the volume, and F12 to increase the volume. Now comes my favorite part of the video, and that is going to be talking about the configuration files. Now I will show you that if you did the installation via my Codeberg repo and have installed BSPWM that way, you're going to find that everything that you need to make changes is in your user.config BSPWM directory. Now within this, let me go ahead and close this. Now within this, you're going to find your Dunst configuration file, your PyCom configuration, your Polybar, your Rofi. There's going to be some scripts, but the main two that we're going to talk about is your Keybindings, or the SXHKDRC, as well as the BSPWMRC. Now, this has to be properties. So if you have any problems at any time, make sure that you are seeing this as a executable file, because essentially it is a bash script. So let's go to Workspace 4. And you're going to see the two files that I'm talking about, okay? This is your configuration file for BSPWM. If you want to, let's just say you don't want this 10 pixel gap in between workspaces. So like, for example, this is a 10 pixel gap. Let's say I only want, I don't know, 2, there we go. And if I save that, and now I hit Super Shift R, okay, you'll notice that the gap size changed immediately, and it gave you a Dunst feedback that BSPWM has restarted. Let's go back and let's make it, I don't know, 6. Actually, let's make it 26. How about that? And now let's go ahead and restart again. And now you've got a gap of 26 pixels. So you get the opportunity to make changes and then restart without having to reconfigure or recompile like DWM. So let's just go back and say, there we go. And now it's back to where it was. If you want to change the color, before I do that, let's talk about focus follows pointer, because I mentioned and demonstrated that when I hover over a window with my mouse pointer, that window becomes in focus. Now, sometimes that will get you in trouble. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that you could simply go over here and say false, save it, and now Super Shift R for reload or restart. And now if I hover over here, it does not put the terminal into focus. I'd actually have to click in order to change it to the focus. Same thing over here. I have to actually click. And sometimes I think that's actually a good thing. So you're not messing up by when you happen to like hover indiscriminately over to a new workspace. Or sorry, not workspace, but a new window. Now, I rather like not having a lot of colors involved. I think it's really simple, especially when you're just talking about border color and stuff like that. So I'm hovering over this blue right here, which is an active border color. So if I just say, and let's just change those two, focused and active border, you notice that it will be like a white color, and this is going to be a dark color. So let's just go ahead and save, Control S, and then Super Shift R, reload. And now you'll notice that that blue is gone. And when I select a window, it's now a different color rather than that blue. Let's just leave it the way it is. Okay, let's talk about BSPC rules. There's a whole section of them here, okay? The very first one is commented, and there's a reason why. The rule is basically for people that want a i3-like layout. Okay, what does that mean? It's going to open things up in columns. Okay, right now, if I wanted to, I will show you like 4 unique windows that are part of BSPWM's binary tree layout. Okay, so let's go ahead and uncomment this, and let's save it, and let's restart. Okay, I'm not actually sure that this is going to work. Yes, it will. Okay, so basically what it's doing is it's spawning everything to the east. So it's using that cardinal direction and keeping everything in columns. So if you don't want that binary layout, then you can simply uncomment this and you're good to go. You are able to keep everything in columns. Okay. So the second rule is basically saying if there's not a geometry associated with another rule, it is going to use these dimensions. Okay, what does that mean? So let's just use QIMGV as the example. There's a rule that says if you open QIMGV, which is just basically a image viewer that is going to float, and then the second rule will be that it will float in 1600 by 900 and at the center of the screen. So let's go over here and say open this with QIMGV, and it will take on the attributes, or the rules rather, of 1600 by 900, and that it will float in the center of the screen. So let's go back over here and let's look at a different one. So calculator is going to have a different dimension. It's going to be floating center 900 by 600. So let's go and look at that. Let's say I'm over here and I'm going to say calculator. Okay. Again, the dimension is going to be very different because of the rule that was set. Okay. And notice here, by the way, this is a 1920 by 1080 monitor. So let's just say I am going to open MPV. It should basically open floating, but it will be full screen. So let's actually try that. So it's going to be MPV. And there you go. It's going to be a full screen video. And let's go ahead and close that. Okay, switching it up then. This is going to be a rule that basically says open GIMP on Workspace 9 and then follow it to Workspace 9. So I think it's Super G, and automatically it put me at Workspace 9, as you can see up here, and is now opening GIMP. Okay, so there you go. That is what, let me go ahead and close this because I don't need it. That's what this rule is saying. So you can basically open up a application on whatever workspace you want, whether you want to follow it or not. And I have a few that I like for myself. So OBS is on 10 and Discord is on 8. That's just my personal preference. Now, strangely, there's not a lot left to talk about in this configuration script, okay? Because the rest of this, everything from here down, basically are start applications. You're going to start exit root so you get the left pointer. You're going to start LX Polkit and Dunst pointing to the BSPWM, Dunst RC. Same thing with PyCom. Faye is going to pull a wallpaper from BSPWM/wallpaper, the one that I choose. You can change this if you'd like. It's going to start Polybar, and it is also going to start SXHKD, which happens to also reside in the .config BSPWM SXHKD directory. So that is it for this BSPWM RC, this configuration file, this bash script that is so darn simple. Now, I don't mean to overstate, guys. I'm serious. When I look at this and I see a bunch of spaces and comments and it only being about 50 lines long, I have to say that this is one of the easier, if not the easiest configuration that you're going to see for a window manager. And if you look at what I've done, you'll be able to figure out whatever changes you want to make to this config. Now, with regard to the Polybar config, as well as the Dunst and the Rofi configuration, there's not a lot to that. And again, we're going to talk about Polybar later on in the week, but we definitely need to talk about SXHKD. This is how you manage your hotkeys, and this is what controls all of the keybinds that we talked about prior. For example, super return, wes-term. Now again, I'm going to show you something really quickly. Now remember, we use this super slash to launch our help script. So it's like super slash, and there it is. You see browser incognito, wes-term. So it's actually showing you everything in order in this SXHKD. So if you want it to be reformatted, all you have to do is put things where you want them, and then once the script parses this file, it will put it in the order that you want. Let's actually go ahead and copy this, and let's put this right here, okay? And we're going to say helium. Oh, helium, and we're going to use super C and helium, and we're going to use helium here. Oops, I messed this up already. So it's going to be incognito, and it's not going to be a super, there we go, and actually this needs to be helium too. So that gives you an idea as to how to change this. I'm going to use Control S to save it and super escape to reload this file, which is the sxhkdrc file. Now, let's just say I want to use a super slash again. You'll notice that it has added those two additions to the sxhkdrc file. And if I say super C, it is launching Helium. And if I say super shift C, it is launching it in incognito mode. So let's go back over to my talking points. And I want to talk about pre-selection for a minute. Because BSPWM, now I don't want to say, I think it's overstating that BSPWM is known for pre-selection. BSPWM is known as a great tiling window manager. Does it have pre-selection as a feature? Yes. But do you need to use it? No. In fact, I would opt not to. In my workflow, having pre-selection involved would require predictive thinking. Where do I want that window to spawn? Do I really need that? No. The answer is no. I would prefer reactive. Open it and adjust. Basically, that is, I think, 90+% of window managers operate under the same kind of paradigm. BSPWM has this feature. I think it's optional, definitely not essential. Now, the reason why I believe BSPWM to be more beginner friendly is because unlike DWM, you don't have to recompile. You don't need to know Lua like AwesomeWM and Python for Qtile. It is plain English bash script. You just edit it and reload, and that is it. So when I think about BSPWM for beginners, I love the fact that it is modular. I love the fact that there's not a lot of decisions to be made in terms of layout or gaps or border. You just get it to work. You make some tweaks, and then you are off and running. It is a bash script that you can read, and it is minimal yet functional. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about i3 and how it is another popular starting point for window manager users, how it compares to BSPWM, and which you should choose. It is very similar in terms of workflow. So until then, take it easy and see you tomorrow.